dear ones. You find this extremely special edition of The Swordsman of Mars by Otis Adelbert Kline being recorded in the caldera of a volcano on Fogo Island, Cape Verde. That's right. Your Pulp Raconteur has gone across the ocean and brought a book. Today's cuppa is actually coffee. They don't really do tea here. You should know that inside of the hotel that I find myself, and this built on top of a lava field in this caldera, the floor is actually emanating heat, and it's patchy where it happens. It is not a continuous, regular emanation, so it really does feel like you're on top of something that's alive. We are in the shadow of the ash cone from the last large eruption, and we drove past the new cone that is forming for the next one, which is about 30 or 50 feet high at this point, so it's not that big of a deal. She said about the magma coming up from the earth to destroy an entire village. Anyways, I did some walking into town, and it is so brutal and beautiful at the same time. People are growing food up here. It's vine plants, it's wine, and it's oil beans, and it's figs and pomegranates, and it's just fascinating and strange, and the rocks are all sharp and trying to kill you, but also there's this warmth, like I said, that comes up from the earth that it kind of wants to take you in its arms. And because we're in the caldera, we're actually surrounded by the wall of igneous rock that was formed millions of years ago from its larger explosion, which is hundreds and hundreds of feet high. So it actually does feel like it's wrapping its arms around you. So from this, the most Martian of landscapes, filled with iron-rich rock and punishing landscapes and totally unearthly vistas, I bring you Chapter 9 of The Swordsman of Mars by Otis Adelbert Kline. When last we met our hero, he had been beckoned to the presence of the Dick Star. He did not know why. When the curtain was drawn aside, Thorn followed Otis through the doorway and found himself in the presence of Irance Tell. The Dick Star, his hands clasped behind him, was pacing to and fro on a plush-padded dais that fronted a luxuriously cushioned throne, which hung on 4 heavy golden chains depending from the ceiling. He was a small man, sparely built and quite bald. Thin-lipped, sharp-nosed, and beady-eyed, his face bore the unmistakable stamp of the zealot and reformer. Irance Tell paced up and down for some time without taking the slightest notice of Otis and his prisoner. After a lapse of some minutes, Irance Tell paused midway in his pacing and, swinging on his heel, faced Otis. "Well?" he demanded in a high-pitched, squeaky voice. Otis raised both hands in salute, holding them before his face. "I shield my eyes in the glory of your presence, O mighty Dick Star of Zanzibar, and commander of the Camood." Thorn was astounded, for he had been told that under the Camood all salutations of this sort had been abolished. The Earthman suddenly noticed that Irance Tell was looking sharply at him, evidently expecting him to follow the example of the Gen, but he kept his hand down. "Who is this ill-mannered lout you have brought into our presence, Otis?" demanded the Dick Star. "He is Sheb Takor, whom I bring in accordance with the Dick Star's command," replied Otis. "His manners are execrable," said Irance Tell, "but they can be mended, and we hear that he is a good swordsman. It may be that we will find employment for him. We are both blessed and cursed with a beautiful daughter, as you are no doubt aware." "I have heard of the great beauty of your Excellency's daughter," replied Otis cautiously. It is a fatal beauty that corrupts our most loyal followers and makes traitors of our stanchest patriots. And today we are constrained to part with 2 more of our best swordsmen. They were her guardsmen, but they chose to let their hearts rule their heads. For such a malady, where our daughter is concerned, we have a most effective form of surgery. What is that, Excellency? In order that the heart may no longer rule the head, we separate them. A bit drastic, we will admit, but it never fails to cure. We sent for you and this prisoner because we must replace the 2 excellent swordsmen. Our daughter, as you know, must be well guarded. We will first take the case of this prisoner here. Word came to us today of his defeat of Surdette, the killer, so we decided to personally examine into the charges against him. He is accused, we find, of impersonating the dead rat of Takor, of wearing a sword of the Magongi, and of slaying a soldier of the Kamud, and, as evidence there, have come to us this Takor family medal. Lifting it from a small tabouret beside the throne. And this sword, which he is alleged to have been wearing when captured, what say you to these charges, prisoner? I could not impersonate the rat of Takor without impersonating myself, replied Thorn. I was reported dead because my crippled gar fell with me after I was attacked, but we fell into a small lake. After freeing myself from the safety chains and the weight of my weapons, I swam ashore. There I was attacked by a party of Magongi, and after wresting the sword from one of them, beat off the others. We can well believe that. But why did you slay one of our soldiers? Because he attacked me on my own doorstep. In answer to that charge, I plead self-defense. The Dickstar paced the dais for some time, chin on chest. Then he suddenly turned and looked at Thorn. We hereby declare you innocent and discharged of all liability on all 3 counts, he said brusquely. And as a recompense for the indignities which you have suffered, we raise you to the rank of Gen and appoint you night guard to our daughter, Neva. He turned to the Gen of the prison guards. You also, my worthy Covlutus, we have decided to honor. You, henceforth, will guard our daughter by day. The face of Covlutus went as suddenly pale as if a sentence of death had been passed on him. Despite Covlutus's dismay, he managed to retain control of his features. I am deeply grateful that our Dickstar has chosen to distinguish me by this honor. Ironstel beckoned Thorn to him and handed him the medal. Take back this badge of your ancient race and wear it with honor. We regret that we cannot return your title as well, but under the present social order there are no more Rads. Nor can we make you our deputy, for upon hearing of your supposed death we immediately dispatched Selhan to Takor to represent us, as he knows our wishes and is high in our councils. The Dickstar is most generous, murmured Thorn. Ironstel now called to the officer at the door. Ho! Dear Hafsel, conduct these 2 to the officers' quarters, and see that they are suitably arrayed as palace gens. On the way, you will permit them to witness the fate which overtakes those who are unfaithful to their trust, and show them the halls of heads. Let a sword and dagger decked with the Takor serpent be brought from the armory for the one who is weaponless, as he is entitled to carry them. The 2 men saluted, and dear Hazef conducted them to a small balcony which overlooked one of the inner courts. In the center of the court stood an officer. Dear Hazef signaled to him, and he in turn signaled to one in a nearby doorway. A moment later, there emerged 2 soldiers, driving before them 2 young officers with their hands bound behind them. Following the soldiers came a tall fellow bearing a long, straight-bladed sword, and accompanied by a boy who carried a basket. The 2 prisoners were forced to kneel in the center of the courtyard. Then the tall man stepped behind them. Once, twice, his long blade flashed in the sunlight, and with each blow a head rolled to the pavement to be garnered by the boy with the basket. "Those two," said Dear Hazef, "were the guards of Neva, daughter of the Dixtar. They had the good taste, but the bad judgment, to fall in love with her and contend for her favors." He turned and walked to the door behind him, opened it. "Enter." Thorn stepped through the doorway, followed by Kovlutis and their conductor. "This," said Dear Hazef, "is the Hall of Heads, a monument to the Dixtar's justice and a warning to all those who would betray him." They were in a long, narrow room, lined with shelves on both sides clear to the high ceiling. On the shelves stood row after row of crystal jars. Each jar was filled with clear liquid, and in the liquid floated a severed human head. There were thousands of heads of young men and old, even heads of women and children. Thorn tore his eyes away from the exhibit with a shudder, and turning saw that Kovlutis had already preceded him through the doorway. After locking the door and leading them down another corridor, Dear Hazef conducted them through a room where a number of officers sat in swinging chairs, sipping pulcho and conversing or playing gapun, a game which consisted of rolling little engraved pellets of gold and silver at numbered holes in a board, the highest number winning all these pellets risked. Although he had never before seen Martian money, Thorn recognized at once that those pellets must be the medium of exchange. A number of apartments opened into this officers' club room, and into one of those Dear Hazef led them. "I'll leave you here to bathe and change. Vors, your orderly, will bring your new uniforms and weapons. You, Kovlutis, are to go on duty at once, and Shebtekor will relieve you at the time of the evening meal." The apartment was plainly but comfortably furnished, with a swinging bed and a swinging chair for each man, a wardrobe and an arms rack. In one corner was a metal box about 8 feet in height, one side of which stood open. It was lined throughout with a gray metal resembling block tin, and this lining was perforated with tiny holes. Beside it was a rack on which hung a number of wisps of which looked like dry moss. As soon as Dear Hazef was gone, Kovlutis began removing his clothing and weapons. "I'll bathe now, if you don't mind," he said, "as I must go on duty first." "Of course," replied Thorn. He was puzzled as he saw no sign of a tub or a bathroom. His curiosity was soon satisfied. Kovlutis stepped into the square metal box in the corner and drew the side shut. Immediately there was a sound of rushing water, accompanied by much gurgling, blowing, and gasping. A few moments later, the side swung open and the officer emerged, dripping and rubbing the water from his eyes. Then he reached for a bunch of the moss-like material and began briskly rubbing himself. Thorn, who had meanwhile removed his clothing, now entered the box and drew the side shut. As he moved about, he accidentally trod on a round plate in the center of the metal floor. Instantly he was surrounded by a swirl of warm, scented water, which came up to his chin. The water soon receded as suddenly as it had risen, and several jets opened overhead, deluging him with a fragrant, creamy lather. After about a minute of this, there was a click as some of the automatic mechanism, and jets ceased to spray, and the swirling water rose once more. While it rinsed off the lather, this gradually grew cooler until it reached an almost icy temperature. Another click, and it drained away automatically. He opened the side, sputtering and gasping, blindly reached for a bundle of drying material. As soon as he had the water out of his eyes, he saw that an orderly had arrived with the new uniforms and was helping Kovlutis into his. Thorn rubbed himself until his skin glowed warmly. Vors, the orderly, then assisted him to don his new uniform and to buckle on his weapons. His new sword and dagger hilts were fashioned like those he had found himself wearing in his first advent on Mars, but were of gold, powdered with jewels instead of plain brass. In the eyes of the serpents were large rubies. The orderly, after bustling in with a three-legged stand on which were a pot of pulcho and 2 cups, hurried out. Kovlutis filled the cups, and handing one to Thorn, raised the other. "May we die like brave soldiers." Thorn joined him. "This is a strange toast. Why do you speak of death?" "Because it is so near. To be appointed as guards to the Dickstar's daughter is equivalent to a death sentence." "I don't see why," Thorn replied. "Certainly every man who guards her isn't going to be so foolish as to lose his head over her." "To lose his head is indeed an apt expression. More than 100 have already lost their heads, even as those 2 we saw this afternoon. Neva is said to be a heartless flirt, bent on conquest. Her father wants her to marry Selhan, but she will not have him, and it is said that she flirts with every eligible male who crosses her path just to spite them both. She is reputed to be irresistible, and her guards, of course, can't run away from her, nor dare they affect to despise her advances, for her anger is fully as terrible as that of her father." At this juncture, an officer entered and saluted. "Which of you is Kovlutis?" "I am," replied the young gen, returning his salute. "If you are ready, you will come with me to relieve the temporary guard of the Dickstar's daughter." "I am ready," Kovlutis told him. "Let us go." They went out, and Thorn, after pouring himself another cup of pulcho, sat down to reflect on the situation. But he had scarcely settled on his swinging chair when Vors came to the door and announced, "Salute the Deputy Dickstar." Thorn sprang to his feet and raised his hand smartly in salute. Then he let it fall to his side and recognized Selhan. "Greetings, Sheb Tekor Gen," said the Deputy Dickstar with a grin. "You seem surprised at seeing me." "And to you. Greetings, Selhan," replied Thorn coolly. "To what do I owe this, honor of this unexpected call?" Without replying, Selhan walked to the taboret and helped himself to a cup of pulcho. Then he seated himself in Kovlutis' chair. For a time he sat there in silence, then spoke suddenly in English. "Shut the door." Thorn closed the door and returned to his chair. Selhan nodded. "I thought so. Understands English." "Perhaps when you have finished talking to yourself, you will explain your business," Thorn said. "Don't get stuffy with me. I can put you on the spot, or I can make things good for you. I came to make you a proposition. What do you say, Harry Thorn?" "I say you're wasting your time, Frank Boyd." "Ah, I figured you knew. Well, I heard about your run-in with Sir Det. Pretty handy with a sword, aren't you? There wasn't another man in this country who could have made a monkey out of Sir Det the way you did." "He was my teacher when I came here. I saw I needed to be handy with a sword, so I picked the best teacher I could find. Since I'm younger, faster, and have a longer reach, I got so I could beat him. Then I went and started to cut my way to the top. And I'm pretty close to it now. Did you come to entertain me with this modest little sketch?" "No. I came to get a line on you and give you a break if you're willing to play ball. I can cut you in on something big." "Such as what?" "I'd be talking out of turn if I told you. First, you do what I want you to do. Then I'll make things right for you." "I don't think we can talk business, Mr. Boyd." "Don't be an idiot. Get this, you're taking orders. I'm giving them. Now this girl Neva is supposed to marry me, but she doesn't see it yet. Right now, just to spite her father and me, she's flirting with every man she meets. she'll probably make a pass at you. If you don't play, she'll send you to the mines. If you do, her father will have your head. You're on the spot unless you listen to me. What burns me now is that she won't even talk to me. Calls the guard and has me thrown out every time I drop in to see her. And here's all I want you to do. I'm going to drop in to see her tonight before I fly to Takor. She'll probably want you to throw me out. If she does, tell her you can't, in honor, lay a hand on me, because I won that duel from you at the military school. That will let you out. At this moment, the door opened, and an orderly entered with Thorn's evening meal. As he arranged the dishes on the tabouret, he noticed Selhan. "May I get the Deputy Dickstar something to eat?" he asked. "No, I'm dining with the Dickstar," replied Selhan, rising. He swung on Thorn. "Don't forget, I'm not asking you. I'm telling you, and you'd better come through." Without replying or looking up, Thorn drew his jeweled dagger and turned his attention to the food on the tabouret, which the orderly had set up before him. A moment later, he heard Selhan leave the room. Soon after he finished his meal, an officer came in and saluted. "It is time for you to relieve Kovlutis in the apartments of the Dickstar's daughter," he said. How long will he last? Will she flirt with him on his very first day? Will his head become another jar in the Hall of Betrayers? Find out next time on The Swordsman of Mars by Otis Adelbert Kline. And maybe, just maybe, darlings, it'll happen somewhere else very interesting, cool. Maybe a beach here in Cape Verde.